Okay. All right, lovely humans. Okay, so we have a small group today. So those, everyone small but mighty, because I know some of these friendly faces, and those of you I don't know well, I hope to in the future. Because little by little, we're starting to network this good, quirky libraries who are doing weirdo things in many ways. And that's a wonderful thing. And today is no different. So glad you all could join us, but especially glad, Sarah, to have you here. Thank you so very much for calling. Are you in Ann Arbor now?
Yes, we are. I'm at
Yes.
the Ann Arbor District Library. I'm home today because we're having some ISP trouble and the internet has been unreliable. So I thought I would just avoid that whole circle.
We know what that's like. So
Yeah.
I think we've all been there at one point in time. So yeah, so this group we t keep typically keep pretty casual. And those of you who just joined, please let me know if for some reason closed captioning, etc., don't work. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We are recording. So today we're in luck because Sarah has agreed to be quizzed and tell us a little bit about the super, super cool Ann Arbor Library of Things. I am really excited, and I have a whole list of questions here that others who couldn't be on the call today have asked me to ask you, just to make sure that we get go. I think maybe you could just tell us a bit about what we should know.
Sure. Um, well, the Ann Arbor District Library has been circulating, mm, we call it the tools collection, but we've been circulating non-book items, non-DVD items, since like our most unusual thing is art prints, which we started circulating in the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
So we've got 40 plus years now um, of 3D inconvenient, easy to damage, unusual stuff. Excuse me. It's always been popular. It's always been relatively in demand. And having limited it for decades to just that idea of, framed poster style art, I think softened us up
Yeah.
to the idea of more unusual things when it came up to being, guitar pedals and amps and synthesizers and sewing machines. We were like, well, if we can make art prints work, we can make these work. And why wouldn't we do it? So we were already a little, like the band-aid was off and so we were prepared to give it a shot. So we've been in the game for a while. We expanded into, what sort of the modern like library of things concepts are, probably in about 2011. So we've been doing
Oh,
this for a
cool.
while, and then a little ahead of some of the curve. So that's part of why we call it a tools collection and the rest of the world calls it a library of things. It just wasn't the term when we started, so we made up our own. And now it's stuck. We've marketed it, we've owned
Totally.
it, it's branded, we're here forever.
We
So
found you. It's all good.
yeah. So yeah, so that's where that comes from. Um, do you want to do questions? Do you want me to run through some like bullet points? How do you want to do
What?
this?
Yeah, so we can do it whatever way you're most comfortable with. So I think why don't you um maybe if you can just go over a little bit for those of us so not everyone is like me and has gone through your entire Library of Things catalog to pull out all the
Reasonable.
questions with. So maybe if you could just go over some of your, what you do lend, what your popular items are, and then I'm going to follow, and then I think that along the way, folks will have questions and we can chat a bit about that. Does that work for you?
Okay, absolutely. All right. So can I let me share my screen, but first
Awesome.
I'm gonna take us to the tools page.
Everyone does it really different. We don't have any, special way that we have some people who just talk for an hour with us and other folks are, questions. Other folks is like, this is the
Yeah.
presentation. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm easy going. So we can do whatever, and please just jump in the chat or, Hazel, if you want to keep an eye on the chat and
I will.
interrupt with questions, please do. Okay, so I have pulled up here our tools collection page. This is just our regular catalog, but I've limited the search to tools and I've got it sorted by just added. So this is what we've most recently put into the collection.
Cool.
Sometimes we are making decisions that are really intentional and that we've tested and tried and thought about and workshopped and decided. And
Hmm.
sometimes it is more of, oh yeah, why would you ever just need one cord when you have borrowed like five different items? Maybe we need to do a 5 pack, and then you can make one request and get five cords. Um,
Right.
Truly, why did that take me 10 years to think of? I don't know. But it took me about 5 minutes to put the pack together and circulate it. So problem solved. There were 100 in the basement, so it was not a problem at all. Sometimes you get somebody coming in. So we kind of break our tools, we break them into broad categories. We have got art tools, home tools, science tools, and music tools. The term tools can be unfortunate when people expect that it might be hammers, nails, drills, saws, and it's a reasonable confusion and expectation. Our goal is to keep away from things that could easily injure or kill someone. So
Yep.
that's why the hammers, nails, drills, saws are not a win for us. So we've never circulated those. Um, but we do think about things like, a die cutter as an art tool, a bat scanner as a science tool, things like that. The things that fit less good into that category are things like board games. It's not a board game tool. It's not, so we just call them board games, not a puzzle tool. They're just puzzles. But
No
it sort of
judgment
goes
from us
along.
here because we all have been through similar conversations. Yeah.
Yes. And as librarians, there's no winning with categories. There's always something that, straddles the divide uncomfortably and you're not able to like completely define it. So that's life.
How
Um,
did you come up with those categories? Did you kind of tackle music first after like, or did you just, did it just, did people donate a bunch? Because for example, what stood out to me was your musical kind of gear and lighting was really extensive.
Yes. So we started focused on, we wanted to stay away really from traditional music in the beginning. So
Hmm.
guitars were kind of a late breaking addition to the music tools collection. We were a lot more focused on unusual, like electronica style things. So we
Yeah.
had a lot of synthesizers. We had a Moog theremin. We still have Moog theremins. And more things you would like very rarely encounter. We have an electronic bagpipe that is so heinous that they never made it to the floor. They made the most disgusting sound you could ever imagine. So we like for the good of the community, we didn't circulate them. It was a bad guess. Um, so we had a lot of guitar pedals. We had sort of like, okay, so if you're a musician, what might you want to play with that the library could provide you with to diversify your sound without spending a lot of money. And so guitar pedals were a good bet for that kind of thing. Where if you're an electronic musician, what could we do to help diversify your sound, vary your equipment, and might cost a lot of money, but not cost you a lot of money to access. Um, and so that's where we ended up with a lot of like, jailbroken Game Boys that made like bliptronic little noises. And those were still pretty popular, but the more starting with a kind of a specialized crew that we were appealing to, and then opened this up to more mainstream. And people were like, oh, I heard you have music tools.
Ah.
Oh, I see you don't have a guitar. And after a little while, it was like, well, who's the dummy? Maybe we should have a guitar. So now we have a range of guitars and basses, and we're looking at banjos. We'll never have anything you blow into or put your mouth on. So
Well,
that's
wait and see because they're doing it in some places and we're having a talk on that in early 2025. So
we'll
I
stay
said
tuned.
never to, but we'll
We'll
see.
okay. Yep, I'm listening. Our director is a tuba player and has very strong feelings about it. So when the
Yeah.
term spit trap comes up, he gets very red in the face. So
Yes.
but there's some sort of no-goes that we have continued to observe. Food is one of those. I know cake pans are a really popular one. If I do ever fall off the cliff, it will probably be on something like cake pans that could go in a dishwasher. But I have a lot of concerns about cross-contamination. I can't guarantee cleanliness. I can't guarantee a lot of that stuff. So
Yeah,
that's going to keep me away from air fryers for sure forever.
yeah, we noticed that I did notice that about your collection. Some of the other folks we've had speaking on in ours included have, diversified in that way. So that's why
Yeah,
it's always really exciting to hear, how you started with a specialized crew and then branched out to more general music, where of course we've also heard the opposite, right? I think that's
of
one of the
course.
lessons learned with these is that there are as many library of things as there are communities out there and as many ways to do it, to fit your
That's right.
needs.
I think there's a tool for every user, and I think the a lot of it is developed by your or institution. You've got to test your own how much you're willing to invest and what risks you're willing to take and what your community demand is like and what partners are coming to you. And those things necessarily impact the way your collection looks and how you're serving your community. So we've been very responsive and we've been very fortunate in the feedback we've gotten and the understanding we've gotten when we've had some like I really want an air fryer and we're like, we really won't do that. It's been fine.
Yeah.
I think they trust us and we sometimes can trust them, but what I can do is usually trust them to be reasonable, to have a conversation or to understand where we're coming from.
So,
One of the things that came in just via a request was this bat scanner, which is a delight of an item. It was easy to use. It was pretty affordable. They haven't really caught on yet. They're pretty new. We've only had them for like 3 months, but they just take double A's and or triple A's, and you just walk around with them, and they sense bats, and you can spot them and you can hear them. It's like a little bat radio, like you're tuning into bat sonar. It's really neat.
that
Um,
is going on our list of wants. That's great. That's great.
yeah,
What
it's very user friendly.
what about, so if we can just go back to the music part for a minute there. So you
Sure.
started working with more of a specialized community on the electronic music scene and then you branched out, but like is that how you got into, so many synths and lighting and things? And have you had issues where, oh, that got wrecked at that event? Or are you lending mostly to nonprofits or are you just lending to individuals and you just have a really awesome music scene?
We have a pretty good music scene. Yeah, we have a pretty good music scene. So the like ugly secret of the a tools collection is theft.
Mm-hmm.
And we absolutely have had theft, and the music
Okay.
tools are the main victim of that reality.
Okay.
So we locate as much of our collection as possible on the public floor. So it's available to browse and to look
Mm-hmm.
at and to touch and to use at the self checkout. And it's there. It's out for the public, and it always has been. It was, I think, the summer of 2022 that the police, like we all have always had some theft and some loss, and it would be empty cases. Sometimes you could, watch the case go into the elevator, and then you could watch like the floppiness of the case on the way out, and they stick it by the potted plant, and they walk out the door, and you're like, I wonder if that's empty, and it's in the coat pocket or the backpack.
Yeah.
So I don't really mean to make light because it has sucked and it has been expensive. We have a lot of people who check out stuff too and then just never bring it back.
Yeah.
Um, or they pretend to check it out, or they check it on their kids, or just there's loss. Loss is a fact of life with this stuff. And especially when we're circulating highly desirable things like, synthesizers and amplifiers and things that are expensive and popular. Um,
But what percentage are we
so
talking here? Like, what replacement, but like, do you have a replacement budget each year that you go through, or is it because it's obviously not big enough so the problem that you're not doing it?
yes, that's right. It never got to a point where it was unusable. It's more not inconvenient sounds too gentle, but it was not we never lost all of an item. We
Okay.
would have like 8
Yeah.
Katana amplifiers and we would be down to 2 because
Okay.
they'd be like a long overdue that now just lives at somebody's house, and we bill, but if they're never coming back, who cares? Like we're not going to ruin their lives over this. We do have a collection agency, but the collections agency is like will make a meaner phone call than we will, but they won't actually like ruin your credit score.
Right.
And that's a
Right.
value of the library as an
Right.
organization, whether
Right.
you have $1,000 tool or, five $110 movies. We won't ruin your life over any of it.
You and me. So on that note, just a couple of things. So just for context, your library is serves, how large is your
Sure.
urban library, is my understanding, with branches, is that right?
Yep, that's right. We are 5 location libraries. We've got a main branch, then we've got 4 branches surrounding, like throughout the community. We are a relatively urban library, and Arbor's an urban center, and it's got the
Hmm.
University of Michigan located in it. So we have a large student population, a lot of transient population, people, grad students moving in and out of the district. And then our user base is about 160,000 people.
Yeah.
So we're a pretty good sized library. We're a class 6 in Michigan, which is the largest. And we've got a large and healthy budget.
Right. So that, I mean, because I think another person in chat just mentioned a replacement budget. That is a good question. So,
Yeah,
like for us, we serve 25,000 people. Now we see 800 of those a day. So that's a good percentage
sure.
for our small thing, but we're in completely different leagues. For
Totally.
example, so like a replacement budget for us, we do put in now 1,000 a year, which we never touch. We never get to that much. We never
Oh,
need to
okay.
use that much. But for
Yeah,
you, that's a drop in the bucket, likely.
it
Yeah.
is. So
Yeah.
our we don't this is just a choice. We could manage it however we want. But I do have a budget line that is dedicated exclusively to tools.
Mm.
This year it's $65,000. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I know. This is my
Yay.
large library. So I've been in libraries for about 15 years, and I've worked at small, medium, and large. And when
Yeah.
I first came to the Ann Arbor District Library, I only bought fiction. And the
Hmm.
budget that I had for fiction was I had to spend in 1 month in order to spend it what I had to spend in a whole year at my previous small library
Yeah.
job. So I'm very cognizant of how wealthy and privileged the Ann Arbor District Library is. But there is the catch to that, and this kind of brings us back
Hmm.
to the issue of theft, is at what point are you being irresponsible with your money? And I don't mean because you
Absolutely.
bought 2 copies of an electric bagpipe that was so annoying everyone, it caused suicidal thoughts. That's a little irresponsible, but that was like $100 mistake. To keep on putting really desirable things that we knew were being targeted for theft on the floor again
Yeah.
and again and again and again, um, became, differently irresponsible, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we made the decision to move them all to the back. So they're in back storage, and now it says available by request. You can do a same day hold, and the staff know that they can go down and grab it. Um, Tools are weird, and we've got a dedicated staff who work on them. So my real barrier to entry there um, is desk staff not wanting to go touch them because they're worried about it. They're just it's harder to tell apart this fuzz pedal from that distortion pedal in a way that it's not scary to know this Stephen King title from that James Patterson title. Although the labels are clearly there, and you're going to be fine. Just go do
And
it.
that is something I might ping you on later, is if you could share your labels. We're having a discussion right now. I just redid our label. We're redoing our labels here, and I sent out an ugly one to this list, and now it's been prettified because that was feedback we got, which we all agreed with. So now
Yeah.
we've beautified it a bit more. But we would love to see more because we're all trying to trade these best practices, right?
That's
So,
something I can send on later. I don't unfortunately have any files handy that would
oh, totally.
demonstrate. But yeah, we make our own, like they're about quarter sheet sized, and we hard
Yeah.
laminate and grommet so that they're hard to lose and they stand up really well. Um, I mean, tools
Cool.
are just they're such an incredible beast. They are unlike cataloging wise, unlike any other collection. They are, as much as I love consistency in cataloging, this never applies. It's never the same between items. It's so
Yeah.
aggravating.
Yeah.
There's an exception to every rule. Everything I tell you, like why I would never circulate a single copy of something, I will later, be a hypocrite about, because there absolutely are cases where we circulate only one of something and have decided to make that the standard. So it's everything is always a case by case basis with tools, and it's taken me a little while to become comfortable with that. But I think it's kind of an important value to hold when you are dealing with a library of things collection. It's you've got to be responsive to the item, to its cost, to its use, to the demands of the public, to the way it needs to be processed every return. Like that all has to be taken into account. And as long as you've got a reason for it, it's fine to be making your own rules.
Yeah.
It's just hard to keep track of.
Well, speaking of keeping track of, another thing we commonly ask everyone who kind of presents is, could you talk? And Peter just messaged us in chat as like, how do you handle repair and maintenance? We know some libraries,
Yeah.
they really rely on their repair cafes and they schedule them regularly. Other times you got kind of tool doctors. Other times it's like you're looking at them. So
Yeah, right.
how do you, especially you seem to have some really different things. So,
Yeah.
you know, do you have people who are specializing in the music stuff versus your art prints? Can you
Yes,
talk a little bit more
totally.
about this?
All right, let me talk about art prints for a minute because they are special. And I highly recommend getting into this kind of collection if you have the chance at all. We've got a big artist community. The Ann Arbor Art Fair is like a huge thing that people travel for miles and miles around annually to come to. It's been happening for, I don't know, 50 years or something. So we have a ton of local artists who always want to get their material in the collection, and we would
Cool.
like to have it too. Um, so what we do is we try to always avoid originals if we can. So always get a print or work with someone to get archival prints made. And then we have good scanners on staff, that we like good size material equipment that we can do archival level scans or work with local artists to get like a Giclée scan. And that's totally worthwhile.
Mm,
Because you don't want to be circulating an original if you don't have to. And then work with find framers. If you've ever framed art yourself, you know it's very expensive. So we've worked with framers to like talk about our various needs. It's still expensive, but what we're paying for. So in the end, we pay for like, I don't know, $30 for the print itself, for the poster or whatever it is that we're going to circulate.
hmm.
And then we get it custom framed at the company that we've worked with for 20 years now, again and again. They frame consistently for us. They do the matting. They use a fiberglass frame and a plexiglass instead of actual glass. And it costs about $250 per framed item. So
Good.
it's super expensive. And if someone's like, I want to donate you this art, we're like, oh, okay, thanks. That's $250. So we have to think really carefully about the donations that we accept, especially when someone's like, I've been a photographer for 50 years and here's everything I've ever shot. Like, no, ma'am, this is a $10,000 price tag that you're handing me. And they don't know.
Of
But
course,
we
yeah.
think about this and we plan for this. So that $250, it's an insurance policy. It makes these things circulate. They last forever. I mean, truly, unless something gets really, really wet or gets run over by a car, which has happened, they last, and you can take a rubber mallet and hammer the corners back together and a little Bondo and you are good. So it's really a question of durability, and it gives them a lot more life and a lot more mileage than they would if we were to go cheap and, do like a $25 IKEA frame.
Right.
These really hold up. So it's
Yeah.
worth paying for the protection. This is true for us for casing as well. We do a lot of creative casing and it's expensive. But the sewing machines should be in a hard case. The arm is too easy to break, and the same with, I'm trying to think what else. Some of our like electronic meters are in like camera Pelican cases. So
Oh,
they're
okay.
kind of camera cases are great because they're very flexible and they often come with a lot of like styrofoam inserts. So you can customize to how much you want to pack it in or not. You can sew them in as well so that people don't take them out and lose them later. So we do as much, error proofing as we can. Um, okay, but that was art prints. What else did you ask me about?
So that's a little, so maintenance and repair. So this is really
Maintenance and
good.
repair.
In the creative casing, just to go on that kind of, so first off, you're talking about you try to prevent the problems to begin with, it sounds like.
Yes,
So
but they still happen.
right, of course they do. Of course they do. So then, so you're trying to get these custom cases, which is fascinating because we just use wooden crates with ours, and I might ping
Oh,
you later about some of this. I want to see how you do your sewing machines because that's how I. Anyway, we'll we'll
yeah,
we'll go down
interesting.
that. So but so that's kind of you're
Interesting.
prepping it. But then for maintenance wise, like, we have, for example, a person who comes in and tweaks our sewing machine every few
Yeah.
months just to make sure it's okay. And I imagine with some of that music equipment or those sergers, as well as then actually needing it to get fixed, we have repair cafes that, for example, we rely on to get it fixed, or it's yours truly fixing it
So a
all.
repair cafe is like what? You call in like who's like calling all handy people, bring your tools and come help us fix.
Yeah, we do it every month
That's
within the
awesome.
region we've set it up. So that's how and then we have kind of the team, because we have that for the community at large, we're able to use it to repair our library of things. But how do you folks do it? Because again, every
Interesting.
library is different. I'm just
Yeah.
sharing like our experience to,
Sure. Okay,
yeah.
so for the sewing machines that we have, we use Husqvarna equipment, and they have proprietary screws. Like you can't
Mm.
take them apart and replace the motherboard, even if you could order it. So we do contract with the company, with the like local. It's the Ann Arbor Sewing Center. It's a local
Got
mom and
it.
pop shop, and we have a service contract with them. Now it's a pain in the neck because you'll see I have 17 copies of them, so when am I ever going to take them all over? I'm not. That's impossible. So we tend to try to like play halvesies, and like we'll half the year we'll carve out a handful. You got to keep track of which barcodes went when, which is inconvenient. But then we, take a big load over in the box truck and we take them home, drop them off with the mom and pop. They have their little spa day at the center, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
But sewing machines are expensive. So it's worth it because these have lasted, I
Hmm.
think these are on their about third year that we bought like a whole new batch. And we've got some that are about 6 years old that are still trucking. So it's been
Nice.
working to do them, and we have not done it every single year. We took most of the pandemic off. They weren't getting that much use. Turnover was a lot slower. But getting maintenance about once a year has kept things in pretty good shape. And then we do as much as we can in house. We can untangle bobbins and we can replace some really basic stuff. Broken needles we can replace, but
Totally.
anything more than that is more complicated and has to wait for big maintenance. Where we do some crowdsourcing is with our telescopes. There's a group called the
Mm,
Lowbrow Astronomers. They're great. They're just a bunch of old people who enjoy astronomy, and they're always looking for
great.
volunteer opportunities. So whenever we have more than 5 of our telescopes in at the same time, we put a call out to the lowbrows. They show up. We set them up in the lobby because you just don't need that much space. And then they'll true the mirrors and they'll do a little refocusing and they'll polish. Um, and so that's kind of and then in winter, we'll tend to like gather them all up and do a more complete overhaul. But generally everything comes back. Like I said, we have a branch system. Everything comes back to downtown. We've got a tools
Ah,
processing
okay.
station downtown. This is where we've got basement storage and I mean, just storage everywhere. I've taken over so much space in our workroom, our poor circulation workroom, who, they think they're inconvenient with their carts. And then I show up with my euphonium cases for the telescopes. It's like, you want to talk about inconvenient? Here's mega chess. There's 4 hockey equipment bags full of chess pieces, and they're covered in dirt. So now we're wiping them all down. It's a mess, but we've got a dedicated staff for it who
Okay.
know if it's an oversized tool, it needs to be checked and made sure that it doesn't have grass in it. And sometimes like there's hollow plastic that needs to be cleaned out so we don't get mold. And they've got a Bible. It's just a documentation binder that has the standard cleaning procedure for every material that we have. If it's got a memory and needs to have photos erased, like the thermal cameras, if it has batteries that need to be charged, if it just needs the rechargeable standard that we keep, or if it has a proprietary type of battery and type of charger, which we obviously try to keep to a minimum, but sometimes that's the only option.
This
And
is
those are FLIR
fascinating.
cameras. Yeah.
Would
FLIR cameras
you
are great, but they are proprietary to the end. It is very not worth it.
Would you be willing to share some of the like a screenshot of your, not again, not right now, but like your the
Tool
this
station?
Bible you go through? Because I
Oh,
think that could
sure,
be really helpful for some folks who are looking to do
sure.
it at their library, where I think everyone kind of has a different, not everyone, obviously you're at a different scale and been doing
Yeah.
this a long time. So we've heard from a lot of different people at different stages, right? So some are brand new, some have been doing it for a decade like you, and others not so much. But I think we all have something like, oh, okay, that's a cool different way to do it. So
Yeah, sure.
if you're willing to, that I think could be really helpful to share on the listserv, so the other people could be like, oh, that might make circulation like me a little more or not, depending
Yeah.
on your
Oh,
team, right? So,
that's right. And for us, we invested in staff early on
mhm.
this. So the more this instantly seemed like a question of the more cooks in the kitchen, the worse it was going to go.
Yeah.
So we have streamlined this to be not like it's not its own department, but it's within my collections department. So I oversee, everything that we're
Yeah.
circulating, everything that the library loans, including like, the electronic stuff. Um, so it's a big department, but this is a big section of it. And I've got two librarians who are full-time selectors for this, selectors and
Wow.
maintainers, which is really unusual. I've got one person who does all the nonfiction comparatively. That's wild. Um, but they're so case by case and they're so expensive, but they're also so high profile and they gain us so much goodwill from the community.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hazel, to touch on a thing you have mentioned is the event lighting, which let me
Yeah.
pull out some of our event lighting. Um, this is the kind of thing that, all right, so some of our values about selection criteria are it's a little inverted from the way we think about most books, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll buy a bunch of copies of a popular book, but when somebody comes out with like an uber special edition, right, and there's limited copies and it's got gold leaf and the author signed it and it's really special, I'm not buying that. That's really special. It's $500 for a reason. It's for super fans. It's not for sharing. It's for someone to buy and treasure. It's not going to do well in this situation.
Right.
It invites theft, right? Um, well, it's kind of the opposite in tools, where like I'm far more likely to buy something that is pretty expensive because it's a barrier to access for the average person and they're less likely to
Right.
invest in it. I don't want it to be something that you need all that often, every day, certainly not. But if you need it regularly, I'm a good bet for you. Um, it should be pretty easy to use and it should be pretty hard to break. And those are a tough balance to strike as well.
Yep.
And then it should be a real pain in the neck to store. That's one of our other like qualifiers. If it's something you can fold up really neatly and put in the closet, well, then you might just invest. Or if you can hang it up in the garage, you might just invest in it. But ideally, it's such a hassle for you that only I, the friendly library, can take on that burden for you. And that's part of what we want to do.
I love
So
this.
event lighting, it's a nice way
I'm
to
gonna
think
put that
about
on a
it.
quote on a t-shirt. This is what the library does for you. Yeah,
I would.
that's neat.
It would be a nice little cross stitch, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
My
Yeah,
my
that's
little
great.
like pledge to why we do what we do. Like for instance, the board games that we circulate, we don't have Monopoly, and I don't think we'll ever have Monopoly because you can buy Monopoly for 20 bucks, right? I don't have Uno, and I'll never have Uno. But I have Duple, which you can't buy everywhere. It's like an online only Kickstarter thing, and
We have
Ticket to Ride.
cooperally.
Oh, there you go. Is that your community?
Cooperatives. Cooperally.
So, we try to just sort of like have that it's rarer, it's harder to come by. We can provide this to you. Your grandma doesn't
Hmm.
have it in her attic, right?
Mm.
And your grandma doesn't have the Eco UV LED ultraviolet bar wash light for event lighting in her attic either. Unless she was a raver, who knows? Grandmas are cool. But
Yeah.
but this is something that we've got that tends to be usually October is like our big month, but there's a bunch of these in the basement. So it looks like the newest crop of students hasn't found out about us yet. Um, but we get contacted by high schools doing, we've got theater guilds who are looking for lights. We've got, especially the charter schools. So if you don't have a big giant theater program, might be how you change the vibe in your cafeteria, which is now hosting your prom. We get contacted by student groups who are hosting events, who have speakers coming to do something or other. For artists who are doing installations and are looking to create more atmosphere. But there's a bunch of these things. They are very easy to use. It's extremely plug and play. And it totally changes the vibe of any room or location, and it makes a great party. You can just do it for a house party, or you can do it for something more structured. But we have people having them for weddings. We've got people having them for all kinds of different things. And this is
Did you
one of those. Yeah, go ahead.
did you get any pushback from kind of so sometimes I feel like uh the library of things that we've seen that we've had chat here, we always tend to have a little conversation of like, how did your community take it? Was it competition? Did the, like, so for example, a tools, if you're lending traditional tools, like how did the hardware store see you? And usually the hardware store is like, great, you're just buying more wood.
Yeah.
Excellent. If you want to own it,
Yes.
you want to own it. How did the rental companies who rented these things, or did you not have, were you in a rental desert, which many
Right.
of us are?
So we do have a rental, a big rental area, and we will never circulate tents, small tents, big tents, or chairs or tables.
Got it. Okay.
And other than that, they don't do this stuff. They don't
Okay.
circulate these giant lights. They don't circulate games.
Yeah.
They might be starting to now, doing like, the giant Connect Four and the giant chess and stuff as those are getting
Yeah.
more popular. But we were there first in that case, and they're welcome to have the business.
Got
But
it.
we are absolutely keeping an eye out to make sure that we are not cannibalizing local business. We don't want to be an enemy. We don't want to be competition. Um,
See.
and if we are, it will have been later. We will have already been doing this because we make a point at the start of a process to make sure that we're not meeting or competing with somebody else.
Yeah.
So when we do get those questions that are like, well, how come you don't do, we get those, we can ask for those like pop-up tents frequently. And we're like, yep, nope, that's, you're looking for A1, they're right down the road. And when we get asked for table saws or, saws of various kinds, we point them to MakerWorks. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
couple of other like maker spaces that are pay to play, um, but I think you should have some idea what you're doing before you do anything with the table saw. So I'm fine with that. Um, but we can point you to these different places and say, we don't have it, but this is where you might go for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you lend
Yeah.
any passes to those places? So, for example, I know the Denver Public Library lends a pass to the Denver Makerspace.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and we do not.
Yeah.
And part of that, the roadblock there is that there is training required. Like
Mm-hmm.
they do
Absolutely.
require some investment before they allow you to do your stuff. So, there would you would need to check various boxes before that pass would do you any good anyway.
Totally.
Can I
Um,
can I ask a question?
these two.
So when you were mentioning earlier all the things you were listing about why you would or would not select something, acquire something, got me to thinking, and this could be for the group as well. Do you have a written specific library of things collection development policy that's separate from your overall, because it is a very different animal, if you will?
Yes,
Do you actually
we
have all that in
operate.
writing, or is this sort of just in your mind?
This is in our mind. We operate, this is for material selection in general, on a pretty less is more policy that we talk a lot about libraries librarians will use reasonable criteria, language like that. Reasonable criteria for a tool might be the polar opposite of reasonable criteria for a DVD, right? Like I was saying about a limited edition book versus a limited edition guitar, So we need to be able to have the flexibility to make those distinctions and those decisions. And we want kind of as vague, as intentionally vague a language as possible to enable that. Our board has been very understanding about this. In the era of book banning, everyone wants to make sure that they've got their I's dotted and their T's crossed, and well, they should. But I quite like having the language that keeps me out of having to follow rules that don't really apply to a various collection or to enumerate the rules for a collection that maybe will be entirely different. In 5 years, there might be something that I cannot fathom today that inverts yet another standard that I think I will live by, that I've gotten very comfortable with. That makes a lot of sense when you think about it, by whatever that thing is. So if you have to keep updating your policy to keep up with what makes sense and is practical, you're creating more work for yourself, and you're having to go back and make cases to a body that will have changed. Like we got this passed with a board that we know and who trust us, and I don't ever want that to change, and I know it might someday.
Yeah, no, you're rocking it. So might as well go with that flow. So on this note of going back to the partnership question, or the kind of past question for a little bit, the reason I asked that too was because I know you have this partnership with this conservation district.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because that I was like, they have a no-till tractor,
I know,
but
aren't they great?
it's an urban library. So tell me a little more.
Okay, so we used to have the closest we ever got to having a tool that is like a tool, that's like a
Yeah.
garage tool,
Yeah.
was a thing called the uprooter. And it was basically a giant lever.
We have one.
Oh yeah, and they're great. They do exactly what you need it to do. But they get bent to hell is one of the things we found. They're always filthy. So we were getting mud and stuff all tracked in. And that's, I mean, it's messy. We understand this. We have a we're in this middle of town, but whatever. We put a hose outside and we can hose things down and it's fine. So we're comfortable with dirt and with whatever. But we kept finding that it was getting damaged and we couldn't really maintain it. So we were like, well, we should get rid of it. We have like 4 of them. Maybe we had more of them, but they were getting damaged. I think we had a couple that we hadn't circulated yet. We were holding them back. And it was like, I think we shouldn't circ these. I think we should wait and we should find a better home for them. We shouldn't add them to the collection because they keep getting ruined.
Yeah.
And so we started looking around at where we would rehome them to. And we came across the Washtenaw County Conservation District. Now, this is a part of the county that it's got its own millage. It's a tax collecting entity, and it's focused on preserving natural space, buying and conserving green space in the community and around it, the community, and enabling. I don't know really all this stuff. They do like native plant sales annually, a couple times a year. And then they have a lending collection. But
Right.
that was kind of lo and behold to us because we didn't know that they had this. And we were like, we've been circulating this. And they're like, what do you mean circulating? We're like, well, we loan it like we loan books, but it's a tool. And they were like, well, we loan tools. And we're like, you do like books? And they were like, yeah. So it was sort of all like, we didn't know they were doing this service. They didn't know we were doing this service.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be in the soil, we decided it's a better fit for them to do it. But because we didn't know, and we know a lot of stuff about our community, more than just the average bear, right? So if
Yeah.
we didn't know, we're like, you guys are in trouble. People don't know about this.
Yeah.
But they know that we have this stuff. So why don't we team up? Now, this is a partnership that I love because like no money changed hands, no stuff really changed hands. All we did, we were like, take some pictures, please, of your tractor and send it to us. And what are the links again? Okay, great. And then we have records like this. So we
So
put the records in, as you
So
can
you
see,
put
it
them
says
in your catalog,
we put
basically.
them in our catalog.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've cataloged them just like we would catalog any items, except for we own none and we never will. And they're not requestable because we don't have them. But as you're
Brilliant.
reading, it says this item is offered through the tool lending library. Now, there's other stuff that we have here that kind of break, as I said, tools break every rule ever. Like I would never charge for a tool. We do not do deposits. We do not do, you have to sign that you promise you'll bring the thing back. We don't do those ever. But the Washtenaw County Conservation District does. So while we say like, we will never ask this of you, no, but I will send you to someone who does. And I can see why they would ask for a deposit when they're loaning you a tractor.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ways to be part of the sharing economy, right? Like that's what we're all here for, trying to remix it to work for our community.
Right. So this is in our collection, but it's absolutely just a redirect. This is a reference. That's all it is. But it looks like an item, it walks and talks like a thing in the library until you are like, that's just the thing I'm looking for. And then you read on and you're like, oh, no kidding. No, it's on Zeeb Road. Well, what the heck? I'll go down or I'll contact them. And then you're already in their hands. So we're really making a connection here, less than doing anything else. We are just sending people their way, but we're doing it in the way that people might be naturally information seeking for it.
So good. Okay, I'm looking at time and I'm seeing there's another question here in thing, but I want to get to one that I know because I alluded to it in our description, which is can you talk a little bit about the downloadable patterns? Because that is something that a lot of, how did are you paying per pattern? Is it like a subscription thing, or did you scan some patterns that were in the public domain? Can you explain, please, what this cool thing is?
Yeah, okay. So let me think. I think it's Drew Hill is where I have most of my patterns from at the moment because I'm kind of on pause. Actually, let me just do let's look for pattern download in my.
So those of you who aren't familiar with kind of the pattern world, there's all these patterns that you can if you want to make clothes, for example, you could get a pattern to
Mhm.
make this shirt, right? And you can get it in different sizes and things, or other
So
things. Yeah.
yeah, so this is an artist who sells at, we have a couple of craft expos throughout the year, and Drew frequently comes and sells, and we're like, these are adorable. And then he had patterns for sale. And we were like, Drew, would you license your patterns to us? And he said, sure.
Great.
So we have long worked with content creators and rights holders to license their materials and make them available to our patrons for
Got
download
it.
whenever possible. And we do this because the digital media landscape for public libraries is an absolutely raw deal for public institutions, and they're looking to screw us at every angle, and I hate it. So while I do pour money into Overdrive, I will never, what if I do someday? I hope I will never engage deeper in pay to play services. So things like Hoopla and Canopy are pretty off of our radar. Like we have no
Hmm.
intention of getting involved in those. Because pay per use is an inversion of the library model, and it's a poor use of public money, even though the demand is great. But it just doesn't, it's not practical. And every explanation I have had with people about this in 10 years, I've had one person be like, but I want it. And everybody else has been like, I had no idea that was the market. I had no idea that's how it works. I'm glad that you found that out. And I've been like, thanks, that's great. Tell your friends.
Yeah.
Um,
So this then you're paying direct to the person who's creating the pattern. And is
that's
it
right.
a one-time payment or is it an annual subscription? Or
It depends.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
already pretty labor intensive to
Yeah.
collection develop along these lines. So
Mm-hmm.
the more that you can do in perpetuity, the more I recommend.
Yeah.
But that means you're going to be paying a little bit more upfront. So you want to talk with your finance department about how you're going to make
Mm-hmm.
that work.
Right.
So what we've done in our licensing agreement is said, if I don't have a perpetual term, that it's incumbent on the content holder, the rights holder, to, once the term is up, contact us to terminate, or their material will stay on the website. Um,
Clever.
Sometimes they like balk at that, but okay, then I'll take it off and put a calendar reminder. But what if what if I win the lottery and I never come back to work? Then I don't know what happens. Someone had better be checking these. I mean,
Right.
we do have files, we do have record keeping, but it's messy. And the longer we've been doing it, the better we've gotten and the more consistent we've gotten about it. But there's definitely stuff that we licensed in like 2006 that I'm finding now, like, that expired last year. I better call up the record label and tell them.
Would you be willing to share these licenses? Is that something you could share? Or
I
like
can
an
share yours.
example? Not
I
like,
can give you a
not all.
sample licensing
Okay.
agreement. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be amazing.
We do customize based on different needs or specific things, but there's only so much you can do. There's things like you can download it, and movie filmmakers will be like, I don't want people to be able to download it. And we're like, no problem, but they still can. Like, we'll take away
Yeah.
the link, but
Yeah.
they can still do it. Like, you're putting it on the website, on the internet, it will get out. So as long as they're comfortable with like people having workarounds and stuff, and sometimes that's a trickier proposition. But yeah, we love our patterns. We love working with the people who offer these. Typically, it's not local, like
Mm-hmm.
Drew happens to be local. Moki Moki Land is another one that we work with. Anna Harakovic, she's based out of Chicago, and she's great. Her stuff is super cute. But typically these people have, active websites and social media, and they're selling their stuff to their followers worldwide.
Right.
So while we are diluting their sales market in Ann Arbor, it's only the people who use our library. So that's only 160,000 people. And of that unit, only like 80,000 have library cards. And of the 80,000, how many even crochet, and how many even crochet this well?
Yeah.
So it kind of
Yeah.
like, when you break it down that way, it's not going to be that. Maybe it was 23 sales, maybe,
Yeah.
but a lot of those people wouldn't have done it or clicked on it if it
And
wasn't free from their library.
all of these are a digital collection, right? So because I know other libraries of things, they have physical patterns in-house that you're borrowing the physical pattern.
Oh yeah, no, we haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, we sometimes have this in sewing books, there will
Mm-hmm.
be,
Yeah.
but those are tricky. We don't necessarily exclude them if we can keep it together and if they feel like they will last in the collection, but that's a tricky proposition as well. But no, anything we can do digitally, we do. Streaming video is another area in which we try to license distinctly. Music, the least efficient collection development project we'll ever have is our publishing imprint. It's called Fifth Avenue Press, and we publish books. And then we pay for editing, we pay for design, we pay for everything except the printing of the book itself. That is the responsibility of the author. And the exchange for that is that I get an ebook of it in perpetuity for the collection. And that is by far the least efficient way to ever collection develop. But it brings books that we think are worthwhile, but would never actually get published in the mainstream. And perhaps would not get published, self-published, which is far easier, than it used to be. But given, who or how the author operates, it might not get it done without us either. So it's a pretty unusual, selection process that we go through. It's a very, another case by case kind of a project brought to you by the Ann Arbor District Library. But it's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding.
Which is so, I'm so glad you're here today. I mean, just thank you for spending this hour with us, because this is, that was something else I noticed. And I knew I wasn't going to have time to quiz you on all of that. On this note, so I'm going to follow up with you with your permission to maybe get some of these examples so that we can share them with the list. If folks on this call have specific questions, would it be okay if they reached out, or would you prefer just to, okay.
No, absolutely. Okay. Get in touch, whether it's through you, Hazel, or, you can always contact me through the website as well. Just hit email and I'm collections.
You're a working librarian. Okay. Well, then I'm gonna, there's one more question here. Peter is put in chat. I want to make sure we get to it, which is, based on your experience, are there specific items or classes of items that you wish were more durable, maintainable, serviceable, and repairable? And I was like, ooh, all of them.
That's a good question. Well, we get a lot of mileage out of having a skeleton. People love that we have a skeleton that circulates, but it's a disaster to case him. And the ribs always fall out, and it's not great. So I think I will always have a skeleton, because I don't know, people love to say and they have a skeleton, and it's become kind of a brand, but he's very inefficient. I do not love the skeleton. He's tough to case. So that's one, but because it's very popular, so that's sort of that push and pull of what do people want versus what can you reasonably get them, and can you actually meet demand? Because as you can imagine, there's always a lot of demand for him around Halloween, and only one person gets him because there's only one him. And so that's one. Anything else about durability? We try pretty hard to means test or use test before we let things go. We sometimes are still surprised. But things like binoculars, which actually get stolen more than we would imagine. So we're moving those off the floor too. I cannot figure out why this would be, but that is the case. They get stolen left and right.
That's like our calligraphy kits. I'm like, what is it with the calligraphy kits? I don't understand.
That is baffling. That is baffling. So, I don't know why they're getting stolen, but we knew people were going to lose the end cap, the lens cap stuff. So we just don't circulate them. They're in a case. It's probably fine. And we see less damage by making that slight risk assessment trade-off.
Yeah.
And we have less back and forth emails with I think I lost a lens cap. Forget it. There are no lens caps. Forget about it. Just enjoy your birds.
That's so clever. They 3D printed a replacement for ours recently. So it's all of them are black and then a pink one.
Very nice.
It's okay, sure. So I guess Peter was especially interested in manufactured items. So that's something to think about too. But one other question on here was, if you could, what caused you to get those cool eyeglasses? And do you find they were worth it? Because sometimes with library things, some of the more traditional, when they started, it was we're going to get these so that people can see if they want to buy them. But it sounds like those are not what that's for.
This is sort of like that. So this is, these were an accessibility purchase. This was looking at, we are the home of the Washtenaw Library for the Blind and Print Disabled. So we do a homebound shipping stuff. We have a Braille printer. We
Cool.
do a lot of stuff for people who are visually impaired or low vision.
Mm,
So these deal with color blindness. And so this is something that can remedy your rods versus cone development and help you see what you may not be able to see with your natural eye development. But they are expensive. And so this is one of those things. It's like, well, is it worth it? How much do I value green? Oh, that's pretty good. Maybe I'll do it. Or I'm getting by fine without it. So it's a little bit of an experiment for people to see if this is something that they would personally invest in, as well as yeah, as well as just make them available. We haven't seen a ton of use of them, but
okay.
in addition to hosting that library service, the Washtenaw Library of the Blind and Print Disabled, we
Yeah.
also do an annual expo called Visions, and it's about and for services to and for low vision individuals. So this was something that was recommended by some of the vendors. We have this connection. They're kind of pricey. So this was something that like we like to have available so that people can experiment and see what their personal experience is. Much like with magnifiers, you know, like you
Yeah.
find that the 7 is a nightmare, but the 5 is your sweet spot. And you don't want to spend $150 on something before you've had the chance to really live with it. And so this is sort of trying to meet that need and fill that gap.
That is kind of the perfect thing to end on because again, like you're working with your community, you've met a need, you like solved it to your point. I mean, these ones are easier to store, granted, but you know, they're still like problematically,
Yeah, it's got a very narrow use case, you know.
yeah,
So if it
yeah,
is something that you'd like to adopt into your regular life, I'm not your answer. But finding out if you'd like to adopt it into your regular life, I can be your trial balloon.
yeah.
And so that's what we're doing there.
So cool. Okay, well, I want to respect your time because it is 3 o'clock, and I know we are all busy, busy humans. But Sarah, thank you so, so very much for sharing all of this.
Absolutely.
And you're getting hearts in the chat. Well
Thanks,
deserved,
everybody.
in my opinion. Because I always learn something in these. I always get more inspired to lend different things. And for those of you, Peter had a good question that I think actually is relevant to the group too. That if there are things that we should be repairing that are manufactured, I was just thinking of all the different types of things I would love to see that are modular and modularly manufactured. And there's so many tools like that I know we would like at our library. But I think that's something that as we coordinate more and get together more, those bigger questions are things that we can actually go and address together and be like, hey, we're all
Mhm.
using this and this is the common problem. And so if you just fix this, we could move it forward together. So anyway, huge thank you to you, Sarah. And we will be in touch.
Thanks very
Keep
much.
leading
Thanks
the
for
library
having
of
me.
things. That's awesome.
And good luck. And thanks everyone for having me.
Thank you. All right, bye all.